midnight screams.
I refrain myself from putting my name out on here, but I just can't keep this to myself anymore. Last year, despite all that was going on, I decided to vacation to a small cabin in the Appalachian Mountains. It wasn't any more than 500 SQ fee, but it was enough for me to get away from it all. And before you ask, I followed all the rules for going on a trip alone. I gave my friends and family my location and the date I expected to return, and kept a radio on me for emergencies, along with my sidearm, just in case. I began driving February 16th, and by the 18th I was driving up to the cabin. It was late at night, and the only thing on my mind was the bed waiting for me inside. I got out of my car and stared at my trunk with my bags, and just thought, fuck it, and decided to unload tomorrow morning. Honestly, I wish I hadn't. As I walked up to the porch of the cabin, the wood steps creaking below my feet, echoing into the forest around me, I heard what sounded like clicking. Click, 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 click. It was faint, but loud enough to get my attention. I spun around, only to see my parked car. The clicking stopped. Jesus Christ, I need sleep. I thought on locking the door. Walking into the cabin, I flick on and then off the lights, and flopped onto the bed, fully dressed, and just passed out. A few hours later, I was woken up by a scream. It sounded like a woman's, and it immediately woke me up. I laid on my stomach in the darkness, waiting to hear it again. My heart pounded. Every second felt like minutes. Every minute felt like hours. Until I heard it again. A shrill, blood-curdling scream out in the forest, distant but not more than half a mile away. Shit. What should I do? I slowly got up and grabbed my sidearm. I can't do nothing. I sprang up and ran to my car, but only when I reached out, my car door was open. I turned on my phone light, and what I saw wasn't good. My car doors and trunk were all open, and my stuff, including my ammo and first aid kit, were gone. I was panicking. I got into the driver's seat and tried to start my car. Over and over I tried to start it, and then it stalled. I smashed my fist down into the horn, screaming in a fit of rage and panic. And then the screaming began again. A woman's distant scream drove me to do something. Anything. So I grabbed my flashlight, formed the glove box, and rushed into the forest. For hours I walked into the direction of the screaming, and after 3 hours of walking, the screaming came from the opposite direction. I ran, back towards the sound, surely to find an injured woman back at the cabin. But I only found more trees. Before I knew it, I was lost, and then the woods went dead silent. No crickets, no wind, no screaming. Now I was bringing to really panic, disoriented, and now in dead silence. In a flurry of paranoia, I flipped on my flashlight, and all around me, thousands of them, eyes. Glowing eyes surrounded me. I then remembered my old ranger training, and I immediately leaned my head to one side and began running. I figured my equilibrium was off for some reason, and then I realized it was them, whatever the fuck those eyes belonged to. There wasn't any woman. It was all them. I ran as fast as I could. I heard them following me, the flashy tapping of feet, the knocking of hooves, the flapping of wings, all behind me. Soon I reached a river, and then I began sprinting, hard. My lungs were on fire. My heart was about to burst. I ran for what felt like hours, and suddenly I stumbled upon a small town. Lights and a small gas station were my salvation. I ran into the street lights and turned around to the woods with my gun and flashlight on the forest. The eyes just sat at the edge of the forest, staring at me. I backed up to the pump of the gas station and sat there, staring at them too, until eventually the sun came up. The owner of the gas station arrived and gave me a ride to the police station, where I was able to call my friends for a ride home. Once I got home, I got myself weekly therapy appointments and just kept my mouth shut to everyone but my therapist about what happened. My friends think I ended up getting robbed. I couldn't tell them what happened. They wouldn't believe me. But maybe you will. I don't know what those things were, or why the hell they were there. Just don't. Do not vacation to the Appalachians for your own safety. Recently, I've seen creepy stories of mysterious creatures living in the depths of the Appalachian Mountains blow up on TikTok. So I wanted to share some stories I have of when I lived there. So, to set the scene, I used to have a house on the Maryland side of the Appalachian Mountains. We were pretty much completely stranded there, as the nearest neighbor was around 15 miles away. So we had to either go on huge supply runs to the nearest supermarket, which was even farther away, or hunt for food ourselves. Also, I forgot to mention, my mom always dreamt of going into a house or cabin in the deep woods, so we decided to live there for me and my sister's summer. Anyway, we alternated between hunting and going for supply runs. Now, I'll start telling the stories. The first one is when me and my mom went for a hike through the woods and found an abandoned Wild West amusement park called Ghost Town, probably like 20 minutes into the hike. Once we got there, we got a weird feeling that I cannot physically describe with words. Like it just somehow appeared in front of us. Then, probably no more than 15 minutes later, we found a huge abandoned hospital. We never knew it for the rest of our stay, but those two buildings were the Ghost Town Village, located in North Carolina, and the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia. We started in Maryland, somehow ended up in North Carolina, and then got to West Virginia, and got back to Maryland in less than 2 hours. We stayed surrounded by woods the whole time, not crossing or seeing a single road. That was just the start of the weird shit that happened. The next story is when my mom took me and my sister to a supply run, and while we were driving, we saw a man with a thick jacket, glasses, a balaclava over his face, and a bicycle helmet, trying to hitchhike with his thumb out. It was the middle of summer. Me and my sister told my mom to just keep driving, but she pulled over in the road and asked the guy, "Sir, are you okay?" He didn't respond. "Why are you out here dressed like that?" The man finally spoke, but something was off. His voice didn't sound like it belonged to him. It was too high, like it was put through a voice changer. "Ma'am, can I get a ride?" Completely disregarding my mom's question. I looked around him and noticed he had no bike, no car, no hiking stick, no backpack, no nothing. Just those clothes. I whispered to my mom to keep driving, and as soon as the man saw that she was trying to drive away, he let out an animalistic, inhuman scream and started to run towards us. My mom floored it to the nearest police station and reported the guy, but they never found him. On our way back to the house, we were on extreme edge, but nothing happened. Then that night, I woke up to a tapping sound on my window, and woke up to the same man standing straight up with his hands on the glass. I lived on the second floor. Now, he didn't have his sunglasses on, He also didn't have his eyes. When I noticed it, it immediately fell, and when I looked out my window for it, I didn't see anything. No man, no creature, nothing. Like he just disappeared. I was so shocked and scared I hid under my covers the rest of the night, even though I was 16 at the time. I peeked my head up occasionally to make sure he never came back. Then in the morning I told my mom about it, but it's not like she could do anything about it. The police would never find it, and my parents weren't going out there. This was terrifying, but nothing compared to the next story. I forgot to mention, but we had a dog named Mac. He was a golden retriever and was super friendly and helped us retrieve the animal carcasses when we hunted. One day I was out hunting with my dad, and we killed a couple rabbits and sent Mac to go get them, but we heard him bark, like he was telling us to go to him instead. We walked over to where he was barking and saw a tree, covered with dead skinned rabbits, each with a shark stick through their head, and their eyes removed with a weird symbol carved into the tree. We were speechless and covered our mouths in shock, and then we heard someone whisper to us, "Hey guys, come over here." We hooked up Mac to his emergency leash and ran as fast as we could to our house. I looked behind me for who whispered to us and saw a man with a huge smile on his face and his eyes as wide as possible for a human to open them, staring at me, and then began to run towards us with a knife. My dad grabbed his hand pistol and shot him in the leg, and he fell to the floor while yelling in pain. Once we reached the house, we called the police and told them about it, and they sent multiple officers to search the area, but found nothing. Not the rabbits, no blood, no knife, no fingerprints, not even the rabbits we killed. For the next couple months, we stayed in a relative's house. None of us felt safe anymore. But my dad, the one who shot the crazy man, was the only one who insisted we stay, said we could defend ourselves, said it was just another crazy and that we should stay the rest of the summer. We agreed, but said if anything else weird or terrifying happens, we go to our house in the city. Then, the final story is what made us finally move out. One Saturday, I woke up and saw my mom missing from the house. My dad and sister said she was just going on an errand, and that she'll be back in the afternoon. Afternoon came and she got back. Nothing else eventful happened that day, until night struck. We let Mac out. We just thought he was going to go to the bathroom and come back. But we heard him run away deep into the woods, like he was chasing something. I don't know why we didn't chase after him even after our creepy encounters before this. When he got back, he wasn't energetic. He wasn't acting like him at all. He was mopey, sad, and acting really weird. Normally, we would have just assumed he saw something in the woods that made him upset, but after the previous events, we were on edge. Then, when we all fell asleep, I woke up to footsteps coming up the stairs. I peeked out my door and saw Mac, standing up like a human, his fur gray, his arms longer than they should be, and his head twisted and upright. His walking wasn't right either. He would walk one step, and his body would flop in the direction he stepped. He wasn't walking towards anything either, just roaming the hallway. My heart was beating out of my chest, and I called my sister, and after calling her 4 times, she finally picked up. I don't remember anything I said to her, but what I do remember is sneaking behind the thing, pretending to be Mac, and met up with my sister. Luckily, the rest of my family slept downstairs, so once I met up with my sister, we were able to wake our parents without going past it. Logically, we stayed in the nearest hotel for the night. We had to go back and get our stuff though, so we went back to the house and found it trashed. The food in the fridge was scattered all over the house, and once we got our stuff, we drove away. I looked back to the house and saw the man, the thing in the winter clothes, staring at me. It was the thing pretending to be Mac. We drove back to our city house and never stepped foot into woods again. I gasped for breath as I stumbled through the forest, branches scratching my face and tearing at my clothes. My heart pounded in my chest, threatening to burst out of my ribcage at any moment. Behind me, I could hear her, or rather, the thing that had been posing as her, sprinting through the undergrowth with an inhuman speed and grace. It had all started so innocently. My girlfriend and I had wanted to get away from the city and spend some time in nature, so we had planned a camping trip in the Appalachian mountains. We had hiked for hours to reach a secluded spot deep in the woods, where we set up our tent and started a campfire. We talked, laughed, and shared stories under the starry sky, enjoying the peaceful solitude of the wilderness. But then, something had changed. It was subtle at first, tiny details that didn't quite add up. The way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she looked at me with dark, uncanny eyes that seemed to reflect something other than human emotion. I had tried to brush it off, to convince myself that I was just being paranoid. But as the night wore on, the signs became more and more obvious. And then, as we lay in our tent, she had shifted. Her bones cracked and twisted, her skin tearing and reforming into something that was no longer human. A skinwalker, a mimic, a creature that had taken on the form of my girlfriend to lure me in and devour me. It looked like a human stripped of their skin and flesh, leaving only the muscles, tendons, and bones visible with 2 empty eye sockets, 2 backward-bending appendages under its armpit. I had barely managed to escape with my life. I had grabbed a knife beside the sleeping bag and slashed at the creature, giving me enough time to scramble out of the tent and run blindly into the forest, freaking out and looking for an escape. Now, I was lost, alone, and terrified. As I stumbled through the undergrowth, my mind raced with thoughts of what I had seen, what I had experienced. Was this real? Was I imagining things? Had I lost my fucking mind? But the sound of his paws pounding on the forest floor was all the confirmation I needed. I had to find my real girlfriend. I had to get out of these woods. I heard a twig snap behind me and my heart leaped into my throat. I didn't dare turn around, but I picked up my pace, running faster than I ever had before. My breath was ragged and my legs burned with exhaustion, but I pushed myself harder, willing myself to keep moving. That's when it hit me. Earlier that day, we were back at the car with my real girlfriend, Amos, when I left first to look for a camping spot. She hadn't followed me, but at some point, what I thought was her stepped out into the trail, saying she had caught up to me. That fucking thing had stalked me from the beginning. Finally, after what felt like hours of running, I saw a light in the distance. It was faint, but it was enough to give me hope. I stumbled toward it, my heart pounding in my chest as I drew closer. As I emerged from the woods, I saw her, my real girlfriend, in the parking lot and sitting in our sedan, looking up at me with a mixture of relief and confusion. "Thank God," she said, running towards me. "I've been so worried. What happened to you? You've been gone for hours. I nearly called the police you. I collapsed into her arms, tears streaming down my face. I tried to speak, to tell her what had happened, but my words came out in choked sobs. She held me, soothing me with gentle words and a warm embrace. It took me hours to calm down as we sped out of there, to tell her everything that had happened. She listened patiently, her expression growing increasingly horrified as I recounted my encounter with the skinwalker. When I was finished, she hugged me again, her eyes full of understanding. I nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I was safe, for now. But I knew that the memory of the skinwalker would haunt me for the rest of my days. Something would always be watching from the woods. It had been a few hours later when I heard from a camping buddy that park rangers had discovered a skinned and utterly mutilated humanoid creature, exactly matching the description of what came after my girlfriend. Something had killed it. Ran into a clean, calm, well-dressed man holding a gas mask deep in the Appalachian wild. Exactly what the title says. It was freaky, man. Obligatory. This didn't happen today, or even yesterday. No, it happened a couple years ago. So, there I was, deep in the Appalachian Mountains, wildcrafting. Meaning, I was looking for herbs, roots, and other valuable plants to forage and sell. Mainly, though, I was looking for ginseng. Ginseng season runs from September 1st to November 30th, where I was West Virginia. So, to set the scene, it was cold out, and the leaves were changing from red to dead. Now, I knew I might see a few folk out there, trying to get their hands on some sung. So I decided to go later in the day. Not quite dusk, but a couple hours before it. It was a rush job. Foraging season was coming to an end, and I wanted to get in and out as quickly as possible. I packed light, then booked my way as deep as I could, as fast as I could. For the first hour or so, I didn't see a single other soul. I searched around, my eyes glued to the forest floor, trying to spot those telltale signs of sung. But then, as soon as the sun started setting, things started to go real bad real fast. I'd made my way over to a particularly thick patch of trees when there was this hooting noise. Not like an owl, more like something, almost human. It sounded like it was in pain, or maybe mad. It hooted again, and I spun around, trying to see through the trees, silently cursing myself for not bringing my visibility vest along with me. Hello? Another hoot. It sounded closer. I spit off some choice cuss words, then turned to leave. That sound, whatever it was, didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard before or since, and I didn't want to get fucked up by some new hybrid species of bear or whatever. Just as I was turning to go, though, something hit me. Hard. I yelled in surprise, fell forward, then turned to see what it was. A deer's head, decapitated, wet with blood and still warm. Oh shit, I said, then scrambled away, kicking it back towards the trees in the process. There was another hoot, softer this time, and the head came sailing back at me. Yep, I'm out, I said, then stood up and sprinted as fast as I could through the forest in the direction of my car. I'd gotten maybe a football field length away, end zone to end zone, when suddenly there was this guy. To this fucking day, I have no idea how he got out there or why I didn't see him walking around. He just appeared out of thin air, like he was beamed up by Scotty or some bullshit. He was wearing a perfectly spotless, slick black suit, these shiny patent leather wingtips, and had the oddest expression plastered on his face. He looked suspiciously calm, like a child caught red-handed with a cookie he wasn't supposed to have. But, honestly, that wasn't even the weirdest thing about him. The weirdest thing was that he was holding a gas mask. Why? I have no idea. He just was. I ran straight into him. I fell. He didn't. Instead, he made this soft grunting noise, then shifted the mask from one hand to the other and silently stared down at me, while I silently stared back up. Finally, slowly, he opened his mouth and said, You've got red on you." "What?" I asked, flabbergasted. What I really meant to ask was, who the fuck are you? And why the fuck are you out here, in the middle of goddamn nowhere, with a gas mask and suit? "Red," he said. "Blood, I think, on your sweater." He reached out his empty hand. I stared at it for a second, then grasped it, and he pulled me to my feet. "Oh," I said, then blinked. Yeah, man, something threw a fucking deer head at me. The man's eyes narrowed. "A deer head?" "A deer head. Over there." "Over where?" I pointed. "Did you see it?" the man asked, looking in the direction I indicated. "See what?" "Huh." An unreadable expression crossed the man's face. Then he said, "You're not just fucking with me?" "No, man. Why would I?" "Oh, I get it. You think I'm crazy. You're the one out here in a fucking suit, man." "I mean," the guy said, the ghost of a smile haunting his face. "A deer head, though? What, you want me to show you?" The man shrugged. He still looked amused. "Sure. Look, man, on second thought, fuck that. I don't care what you think. I don't even know who the fuck you are, or how you got out here. I'm not going back over there. There's some thing out there." The man raised his eyebrows. "Something. I know. Now I sound even crazier, but another hoot. Way too loud this time. It sounded pissed. I looked behind me, worried. "See? What the hell is that? You heard that, right?" The man didn't respond. I turned around, mouth open, ready to say something else, but the man was gone. Fucking gone. Again, I didn't hear or see him move. Just 1 second he was standing there, and the next poof gone. "Hello?" No response. "Hey, man, are you fucking with me now or what?" Still no response. Then, a thunking noise. So loud it made me nearly jump out of my skin. Something hitting the base of a tree. It was a fucking gas mask. His gas mask. It was crushed and covered in something that looked a lot like vomit or bile. The hooting rose up again, louder than it had ever been before. Then, like a hot knife slicing through skin, 2 blasts rent the air. Gunshots, a double tap, and that hooting thing screamed. I didn't even look around. There was no point. Instead, I shrieked like baby, then went on my merry way. By merry I mean I flipped a shit and ran all the way back to my car, dove in, then burnt rubber out of there. I still have no idea what the hell threw that deer head at me, how the fuck that guy walked through the Appalachian wilderness without getting so much as a goddamn speck of mud on him, or what ended up happening to him. I mean, yeah, you can say that maybe that guy was just fucking with me, but I'm not so sure. Honestly, I think something else was going on, something stranger. There was something other than me and that impeccably dressed man in those woods that day. Something not quite human and not quite animal. Something strong enough to rip the head clean off an adult deer, and something smart enough to then play around with it like it was a goddamn soccer ball. Maybe even something with really big feet. In the end, though, I don't actually know what it was, and I don't know if I ever will. All I can do is speculate and continue to share my story on the off chance someone else has experienced something similar. I can, though, say one thing with certainty. Fuck the forest. The following journal entries were found in the New York State Archives in Albany, NY. They are the last 6 entries from Charles Williams, an agent for the Crown delivering a message from the Governor of New York to the Governor of Maryland. He traveled with a Mohawk Indian guide, whom he referred to only as our Indian guide, never giving his name, and an Irishman named Mr. Fletcher, serving as an interpreter. They took a rugged trail through the Appalachian Mountains. Their reasons for taking such an unorthodox route were never explained. The first several entries were of little consequence. The message they were to deliver was never revealed in Williams' journal. All that was said was that it was of extreme importance and for the governor's eyes only. 4 days into their journey is when the accounts become interesting. 3 July, 1712. Dear Loretta, our journey has been a hard one since we left the safety of the walls of Schenectady. This land is forested beyond anything I could possibly expect. The views are spectacular, though. The rugged, green-carpeted hills seem to endlessly unfold over the horizon. In the morning, they are tinted blue by the cloudless skies, and you can hardly tell where the skies end and the land begin. Mr. Fletcher and our Indian guide have been speaking more frequently as of late. I am beginning to feel there are things they are not telling me about the trail ahead. They are becoming suspicious, constantly scanning the surrounding hills as if they are being watched. I assumed they were merely looking out for bears, but something has changed. Maybe it's just my inquisitive mind filling in the foreign Indian tongue. All my love, Charles. 5 July, 1712. Dear Loretta, I can scarcely write after what we witnessed today. As we left a clearing, we came across 2 lonesome trees with thick branches peering out in all directions. To our horror, we found 2 lifeless corpses hanging from the trees. Their friend, faces contorted and rotting with black crows picking away at the flesh. It was terrible, Loretta. Judging from their white coats, they were French. What they were doing in this part of the country I cannot say, but someone did not take kindly to their presence. Our Indian guide became belligerent when he saw them, insisting we turn back. Fletcher says he spoke on and on about the giants who roam in these parts and how this was a warning that we were entering their territory. Fletcher was just as shaken as our guide, rambling on in his Irish tongue about giants and other jabberwocks of the old country. The Irish are just as superstitious as the natives of this country. I can hardly blame them, having seen such a grisly sight, but there is a perfectly logical explanation. I have no doubt this was the work of the Indians in these parts, maybe even the Mohawks or other tribes unfriendly to the French. They would probably be willing to help us if they share our enemies. Still, I can't help but feel sorrow for these men. Fellow Christians should at least have a decent burial, and had time not been of the essence, I would have insisted we provide one. Your loving husband, Charles. 8 July, my Loretta. The last few days have been nothing but non-stop talk of ghosts, monsters, and jabberwockies. Mr. Fletcher would fit in easily with the natives of this country. He relayed a story from our guide of how the old gods were stricken down and forced to live on the earth. This apparently is where these giants came from. I laughed when I first heard the story and questioned the Irishman about his merits as a Christian. The story goes that the giants howl, lamenting their fates. They live in the mountains to be closer to the heavens, where they had formerly lived, and to stay away from humans whom they regard as inferior. Over the years they became dark and twisted, hating all things and cursing the new gods and the humans who worship them. How much of this story is actually from the guide, and not a mixture of Irish folk tales and Fletcher's imagination, I cannot say. Charles. 11 July. Loretta. For the second night we heard the howls, screaming deep, bellowing across the mountain valleys. It's as if Fletcher called down the giants from his story. Our guide has ceased to sleep without another lookout. To appease him, I agreed to have a night watch. I have to admit that my emotions are starting to rule my thoughts as I lay awake hearing the echoes across the dark valleys. I brought a looking glass for my pleasure, and when the moon is out, I swear I can see rustling in the valley below. It's probably just bears or the wind picking up. Giants are not the main candidate. I really should save my ink for more important updates, Charles. 12 July, Loretta. While I am not inclining to believe in giants, I am convinced that there is something dangerous in these mountains. Today we came across another gruesome sight. It took time for me to realize what we were looking at, but in a grove we found several trees painted in fresh blood. We found more and more trees around the grove covered with blood, until at last we came upon the source. 3 black bears, badly mutilated. They were disemboweled, missing their eyes and teeth. Blood came from their noses, and they were placed in a perfect circle. I still suspect this could be the work of some savages. However, there were no arrows. It is possible they could have been shot before being mutilated. However, we heard no gunshots, and the kills were clearly fresh. Charles, 15 July. Ink is getting low, so I must be brief. The howls and growls continue at night. We have our muskets ready. Our guide has convinced us that he knows no tribe that inhabits these parts. Fletcher has asked him if it was safer to turn back. He told Fletcher that it did not matter, that once the giants see you there is no escape. My task is urgent, and I have no choice but to continue onward. If they knew the contents of my message, they would know that turning back is not an option. 16 July. Our Indian guide has vanished. I know not where. We spent all day looking for him. Fletcher claims he knows a way down the mountain, and I have no choice but to follow as I am unfamiliar with these parts. We'll find a more conventional route from there. 17 July. Early in the morning we found, I am not sure how to explain, what looks like an organ hanging from the limb of a tree. I am not a doctor, so I don't know what organ. The howls continue. The ground shakes at night. The moon hasn't shown itself in days, so my spyglass is useless. We fired off a round of musket fire as a warning shot to whoever is out there. 19 July. Loretta. This is my last entry. The ink is nearly gone. We saw eyes in the distance last night, blood red coming towards us. They vanished when we fired, but the howling always continues. It's getting closer now each night. You have my love, Charles. This is the last entry in the archives. I found records of a Charles Williams, confirming that he was an agent to King George I working in America. There is no further evidence of what was in the message he was delivering or his journey across the Appalachians. There is no record of a Mr. Fletcher or an Indian who worked with Charles Williams. There is no other evidence in the archive regarding what could have caused the disappearance of Charles Williams.